Welcome back to another DTF Film Session. I'm Max Dean at the Max Dean on Twitter, here with Nick Merriam at Nick with Sports on Twitter. We are going to talk about Anthony Richardson today, the quarterback from Florida. I'm excited for this one. He's a polarizing player. Some people love Richardson. Some people wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole, at least not in the first round. Some people have various thoughts on him. He's a super traitsy guy. Can run, can evade, can rip that ball downfield, but still needs some refinement. And we're going to take a look at some of those things and see exactly what it is that he needs to work on to become a successful quarterback at the next level. Nick is our resident director of draft content and scouting over at Defiant Takes Football, and he's going to help me break him down here. Nick, how you doing today?
Doing well. This is one that I've been excited for. I've been a Richardson fan since the beginning of the season, and he's been up and down. So there was a point this season where I wasn't certain we'd be talking about him this early in the draft process, but it's cool that he's put enough on tape for us to be able to talk about him for sure.
Yeah, 100%. We get a guy of this kind of physical caliber, every couple of years, certainly not every year. It's fun to project. It's fun to think about where he might end up and what might work for him. So let's get into it. We've got him listed at 6'4", 232. Do you suspect he's a little bit smaller than that? As we were kind of setting up here, you were like,
this is like the most confident size measurables for quarterback that I think we're gonna have. If anything, like I could see him weighing a little bit more. Even it's funny. He's got the same exact weight listing as Will Levis. He's just an inch taller. And you're going to hear me comparing the two often, just because they're both toolsy quarterbacks. And I think those are the two guys kind of in their own tier behind Stroud and Young for most people, anyways. That are being debated which one is QB 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious because the one thing about Richardson versus Levis that has been actively talked about in multiple places that I have tuned in for is there seems to be a very consistent praise for Levis in terms of his leadership, his toughness, his intangibles that coaches tend to fall in love with. I am not saying in any way that Richardson doesn't have that, but it has not been intentionally reported in the same way that I have heard. So I think there's one thing there that sets them apart. But I am curious to hear from you what you think about him, and then to maybe find out from people who are closer with the Florida program what they think of him as a person as well. Because sometimes that narrative, one player having it versus another not, is not true at all, and it's just an agenda pushed by somebody.
And I usually think that is the case, unless we've seen legitimate like signs of this. And I've seen all these players interview. I don't think interviews are like the best measurement of what they are as leaders, but I think you get a good idea of what each of these kids are like. And I think all four of these top quarterbacks are like good, strong-minded like quarterbacks. Like they're not going to have issues going to the NFL from the leadership, like leading, being a part of the locker room, assimilating into that, hard, like work hard culture that the NFL is. And Richardson is of course a part of that. I think the Levis thing, I mean, we could go into it, but it's interesting just because I think we heard that early in the offseason and it has kind of stayed the same. And it's not like we've had specific people really say that. It's just kind of been like a media thing, and this happens every year, and I'm not certain how realistic it is. Like we had like last podcast we did where you hopped off an hour early. Kyron and I had a whole discussion about Justin Fields because we were doing the NFC North and how Fields had these off-field concerns, which don't appear to really be a thing. And Kyle Hamilton this year had that as well, and he played really well. So it's just I try not to make too much of it. I don't really think it's really a thing that sets guys aside unless it's very unholy obvious in some cases, and that is not the case this year with these quarterbacks.
Right. And it's not like anybody has said anything negative about Richardson in that light. It's more
Mhm.
just about the effort that they're making to point out
Mhm.
Levis's
Yeah, and I think the
intangibles
point
and
should be like intangibles do a lot for you, right? But all these guys have good intangibles to be where they are at this point in the draft. And if they all, if it's
right.
not like I don't see how personally Levis's intangibles could be so good that you would take him number one overall over all these other quarterbacks. Just on that alone,
Yeah, sure. I
which
mean, I
appears to
think
be the discussion.
I'm wondering if somebody's this is not really a Richardson conversation per se, but I'm just wondering if that's really just someone trying to justify how much they like him. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yeah.
knowing that he's not quite that ready, and so they're looking for a way to lift him up or elevate him on their boards. Um, and then I mean, let's be honest, over the course of NFL history, black quarterbacks have never quite gotten that same type of praise, right? And sometimes that's very unwarranted. So
Hmm.
I think that's probably something to be aware of as well.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting conversation about prospects and scouting that's not always, I think, had in the most, I don't want to say honest way, but like in the most aware way. So I'm glad we were able to talk about it here for a sec. But let's jump into the tape. And before we actually get into it, I suppose let's give you an opportunity to talk about any general characteristics of his game that you want to point out.
Yeah, he's a toolsy player. You see the off-platform arm talent. You see the power rushing threat. He moves different for a guy his size. He has the anticipation and touch accuracy. It's inconsistent at times, and that inconsistent accuracy is definitely something that is going to hurt his tape. Like Levis, I think he can be a robotic reader of the field at times, and sometimes pass up on some things that are more complex, and that comes from experience in his case. He's only really played 2 years, year and a half in college. And there's really just a lack of overall drop back depth from his college sample size. He played a year and a half. They ran the ball with him a lot of read option, a lot of RPOs, a lot of play action. We're going to see that on film here, and he's a guy that you hope can turn into a Josh Allen type, where you consistently can go, hey, it's 3rd and 10, we need to make a play, 5-step drop, let's see what happens, and we
Mhm.
just haven't had that sample size yet. So these are the adjustments he's going to have to make at the NFL level outside of the game that was relatively developed for him as a college player at Florida that took advantage of his physical differences. In the NFL, he'll still be physically, a better player than most defensive players he's going up against, but that difference is going to drop off quite a bit.
Right. He certainly went up against his fair share of elite athletes in the SEC. But let's take a look here.
So let's start out with play one, just to talk about decision making. And it's something that you don't always see from Will Levis is control under duress. And I wanted to point this out with Anthony Richardson because although I think Richardson sometimes tries to do a little bit too much, which we'll talk about later, he also has a little bit more where when he's in the process of a play breaking down, you can see the steps of his mental processing and what he's thinking about. So you can see here, like this play kind of dies right off the bat. I believe there's a play action thing here. It might have been an RPO move actually, and the pocket's going to crumble. He's going to get pressured, and it's just going to be a throwaway, right? And it's not going to be even the easiest throwaway. He gets pressured, he gets hit. He needs to kind of use his arm talent to get this ball out of bounds, which he does. But that in itself is something that, just in comparison to Will Levis, as again, we talk about the comparison between the two Levis, you see less often when these plays get messy, him kind of making the safe play and getting the ball in a place where, you're not going to have a turnover. But in Richardson's case, although I think you see more of this, you sometimes see him maybe push the ball downfield a little bit more dangerously, not in ways that, are kind of panicky, but in ways that come up with inaccuracy and like the throw was actually there, but he didn't actually get it there. In this case, he's pressured and he does just get the ball away. He could throw that screen route, right? Levis might throw that ball as a screen and it might be like a 2-yard gain or a 2-yard loss, and we don't know what happens. But in Anthony Richardson's case, I think you see a little bit more of him, getting to the decisions that allow him to operate from a safer down to down play style. And where he's going to have issues is when his inaccuracy kind of hurts him in these situations because he's going to throw more of these balls off platform like you see on this play here. It is play action in itself, but this is like a simple thing that I like to start off the tape with. You see people do this kind of often, just throwaways, right?
Mhm.
I don't think this is I don't like starting off throwaways immediately because I think It's kind of cliche. A lot of people do it. But this throwaway play in itself to me is impressive just because of where he is on the field, far hash, the arm he needs to get it there, and the pressure that's coming down on him already. So just know that these tools can be used to save plays as well as make them.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to ask you what you think about him escaping the pocket to the right, because we've talked before about there is a lane here. He's got a blocker here if he
Yeah,
wants to
I
step
don't
up in
know.
the pocket.
Because it's
So
play
what do you think about
action.
it?
It's play action, and the flow of the play is going to be to the right, and then so you're not really like there was a play between the Washington Bears game earlier this year where everyone was upset at Justin Fields for passing up at an open player in the flat on the opposite side of the field. I think the design of that play is for him to look right immediately here, so he's not ever going to be running through that lane, and even so. I'm not certain this lane is as clear as you'd like it to be just because that defensive tackle is chasing him down. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, get on him about this in this case. And we're going to talk about his pocket presence, which I actually think is pretty good, and some of the things that he does well with that on coming plays. But let's go to play 2 because this is really just a throwaway in itself. Now I want to show off his live arm and off-platform throwing ability. This play I clipped poorly, so we already have it starting. But look at the situation we got here, right? Kind of falling away from the play, getting chased already. Again, he's kind of bailed from the pocket, but it's a little bit because he's gotten pressured immediately. And he's going to be able to make this throw to a place where not only the receiver can catch it and the defender isn't on it, but also gets it with enough power that it allows the receiver to make a tackle miss and actually gain a first down. Again, this is just showing off physical tools, right? There are not many quarterbacks who can make this throw in a way that allows the receiver to still pick up the yards for the first down. And this is in the face of the play completely breaking down, him having to make this decision and know where this ball needs to go so that it is not only protected, but so that the receiver can catch it while moving and not having to kind of like stop the flow of that route and then adjust upfield and force a missed tackle. But this off-platform throwing ability from him is probably, I guess it's either him. Stroud and Young do a good job with it as well. I think Young does a good job of always keeping his base straight when he's throwing. But Richardson does a lot of this off-platform stuff. It can get him into trouble at times. But you also see things like this where it is. I don't want to call this a highlight reel type throw, but it's an impressive throw in itself.
It is for sure. I mean, he has basically no time. So once he pulls the ball from the running back and he just has to evacuate the pocket like immediately. Maybe that was the design of the play. Didn't look that closely, but he's already got guys in his face and he's running. And then there's really no body torque to this at all. This is almost 100% arm, and he just flicks it right here. And it's a really nice throw. It leads the running back, on the trajectory of where he's running to so that he can catch it and then make a move as opposed to having to adjust to it. So it is quite impressive, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. So we've seen his arm. We've seen his ability to kind of make a decision. Now let's just look at his mobility really quick. I do want to try and get through all 6 plays if we can. This is just very quick. He's going to step up through this pocket, run the ball when the initial throw isn't there. And I just think it's impressive the change of direction he shows, the speed he does at his size. And this is different from Will Levis. Will Levis can't do this. There are not many players in the NFL that can do this. This is like the Treylon Burks type athleticism that people loved how it translated on the tape. The change of direction and speed combination at effectively a similar size, 6'4", 230. That's what Treylon Burks was at. You could argue that Richardson moves similarly, if not even more athletically than Burks does. And at the quarterback position, that is going to get you drafted highly in itself. This is a much smaller safety who is probably a good athlete as well, that he's able to kind of gain an extra 3 yards by faking taking an outside lane instead of getting upfield. And, if I did this, I might tear my ACL again these days. So, at his size, like that is not only just that is speed and agility, but it is strength to stop and put your foot in the ground, right? So play 4, we're going to think about this all, right? We've seen his ability to get rid of the ball. We've seen his ability to throw accurate off platform. We've seen his ability to run. The issue with a quarterback that has all these options, who's inexperienced, is sometimes the mental processing at times can be a little bit overwhelming. So this is going to be cover 6. It's going to be a pretty easy read. And he's going to step up in this pocket because he gets a little bit pressured here. And he has all these options when he gets to the step-up point. He's going to have kind of a seam or a fade route on the outside, which is going to the cover 2 side and half quarter. at the bottom of the screen, that's an option in itself. He can run, he can throw the ball away, and he's going to have the running back kind of checking into a flat route, which is probably not going to gain a whole lot of yards, but it is downfield, and it would save a play that doesn't initially have options to throw to because they motion into a 3-by-1 to the short side of the field, and Tennessee checks into cover 6. It's just way too crowded at the bottom of the top side of the field here to really make a throw. But he still has effectively 4 options. And I think sometimes you get into this position as a quarterback with all these options, and they all look kind of all right. I guess the best thing to do here is to throw this downfield, this open guy on the sideline, but you're off platform. You got a guy chasing you. Maybe running is safer, maybe dumping that off safer. All would probably pick up positive yardage and be fine plays. And ultimately, he doesn't make any of those decisions because, quite frankly, I think he sees all of them at once and just doesn't get to any of them quick enough. And at the NFL level, when he starts out, and I think this is why you see these guys, this is why the RPOs and the play actions are easier for them. You need to kind of limit the options early on for them. Make it so that they're deciding between just running or checking it down, or just running and throwing it deep, or just 2 different receivers. Because in that case, you kind of can help them learn what options they feel most comfortable with on these type of plays. This is not an easy one for him. He does get pressured kind of quickly, and the defensive lineman tracks him very well. But I would like him to kind of get this ball out quicker. And he is one of these quarterbacks who maybe takes a little more time in the pocket sometimes than he should.
You can see right here, he wants that receiver on the left sideline.
Yeah.
And it's a tough throw to make because you do have to put it in a particular spot.
But I think it's safe. I think it's a safe throw because you have a safety who's on this hash, right? Rotating all the way over to that deep half. Like, that's a long run for him to make. And Richardson has the arm. This is more about just the quick twitch to get this ball out. And there's something here that makes him not throw it. I don't know if he doubts himself or if he's thinking about these other options he has and wonders if one of them is going to be better. But ultimately, when you get into that process of like, oh, maybe I should just run, though, you're thinking about all these things and you're not making a decision, and that loses you time.
Yeah, so he sees it, he wants it, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't strike, and you can see him kind of just, he's kind of skipping up in the pocket, kind of hitching a couple of times, and then the defensive tackle breaks off 77 here right when, he thinks he actually might be able to make it. So this is definitely something that you'd like to see him be a little bit more aggressive with, I guess.
All right. So pocket presence here. Some people really like his pocket presence. I think it's probably second in this class to Bryce Young, but it is very good. He has the mobility and manipulation that translates for sure. He's going to step up in this pocket, even though it kind of shifts to the left. He's not going to be in the pocket, but he's inside the tackle box at the start of the play. It starts out the play still. And the only thing I'd like to point out here is he could definitely drift to his right and kind of away from the play and make this throw more difficult for himself. And I think a lot of the young quarterbacks do. But he straightens out and he still steps upfield despite not really being around his offensive line anymore. And that allows this throw to be a better angle. And he has more verticality on the throw because he's stepping up straight. And it allows him to get more throw power behind it. His feet are going to be more easily set because he's moving in a straight line towards a target. There's a thing in rugby where, pause it here. All right, well, we'll get back to that part of it. There's a thing in rugby where in gap control, you move the defender, but you need to straighten out to take advantage of that movement, right? So he's drifting here to his right, and he could keep drifting. He has receivers at the bottom of the screen that he could throw to, right? But his tendency to drift and then step up, this is something you practice a lot. You do reps like every day and practice about this footwork, is something that needs to be ingrained mentally. It's something you actually have to do and think about because your instinct will be to run away from the defense, right? He here allows himself an easier throw because his tendency is to track right and then upwards, where although he is more likely to take a hit now, that throw is more available to him. Look at it one more time, and then I want to get to this last play because this next one was maybe one of the more impressive pieces of film that I saw from any of the non-Bryce Young quarterbacks, just in terms of process. So we're going to get cover 4 here. Florida's going to run play action with 2 deep crossers and a curl flat combo to the top of the screen, right? because Tennessee stays balanced here, there's going to be a motion to a 3-by-1, I believe, from Florida to the top of the screen. That's a 3-by-1 versus Tennessee. You can obviously see like the two corners, the two safeties. They're in like a 2-by-2 secondary look versus those receivers. Because they don't follow the motion, it's likely zone, but also the one deep crosser to the weak side of the field is going to be X'd out. You're not going to throw to the 1 versus 2 side of the field. You're throwing to the 3 versus 2 side of the field, right? So against cover 4, flat is open. So let's play to the point where he looks to the flat route, because that's going to be the correct read in this play, right? That's going to be the motion player. He's wide open. You throw it to him right there. He probably picks up, 6 yards, maybe more. If he makes a guy miss a tackle, it's a big play. That's a good one. Richardson is going to drop his shoulder and pull this corner down, and he's going to fire a strike to this deep crosser in the space he kind of vacates while the defender in the middle of the field follows him. And this is a throw that only really he and Levis can make in this draft. This is stealing yards, right? This is something that this is why these guys go higher in the draft. He is going to throw this right by the ear of the linebacker underneath, over his head, and in a spot where, though the receiver catches up to it, it is out of the reach of the trailing defender, and also still is able to get that ball down and around the corner, which he brings down with his shoulder, despite the corner really only taking 2 steps. The whole point is he gets his body control moving down towards that flat receiver. And because he manages to do that, he gives himself just a split second he needs to throw this ball. And again, even with that, this underneath linebacker that's between the deep crosser and the quarterback is in a great position to intercept this pass. And in the NFL, he might, but kind of the guts, first of all, to throw this ball, I love, but also just the fact that he's able to kind of get the perfect trajectory on this throw after drawing the corner down towards the flat receiver.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive. So because it's cover 4, this corner has the deep quarter responsibility to the field.
And he's not, I should say, he's not dropping, because it is definitely cover 4 because of the way the safeties drop right back. This corner just doesn't drop initially because there's no real assignment for him. He can stay where he is.
Well, he starts to drop just a little, but also he sees that this guy's coming out here. So he's probably aware of that even before Richardson turns and gives him the shoulder fake. So basically he pulls him out of his deep quarter, and then he also this linebacker here moves up because of that too, but also he again creates a throwing lane for himself because he moves right too. So it's his ability to quickly move and also get the ball out without standing easily in the pocket, and it's a very impressive throw. And you can watch it from the back end too.
Yeah, from the back end, it's just as impressive. You got to see how close this ball gets to the linebacker to really appreciate, the speed, the velocity of this throw makes it difficult to make a play on.
It's ridiculous. Again, there's so little body torque in that when you actually see him up close. It's just he just rips that ball all arm. And he creates that throwing lane for himself too. So it's not just it's a spatial awareness. Clearly, he's not just saying, "Okay, I can move the corner out of that spot and then throw the ball." He's like, "Move the corner, move my body, keep that lane alive, and then throw the ball." So it's an awareness of just more than one concept.
Yeah, and even subtly, like you're saying, he moves kind of towards that linebacker. He runs a little bit towards him, and that can bring the linebacker down as well a little bit, which creates a little bit more space outside of just drawing that corner. There's a lot of moving pieces here, and there are throws like this on his tape that are high-level quarterback play. It's the inconsistency of them that's interesting. That being said, this is play action. This is a high-level play action play. Normally these plays are a little more simpler, but I don't know how often Florida really gave him opportunities to flash this. I wonder if they did more, what it would look like. There are games where he just couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, quite frankly, against not as good defenses as SEC teams have. And I think that was a worry for Florida and why we didn't see it as often. But his better games, like Tennessee, were just littered with throws like that.
So last question, because this is running a little bit long, but it's quarterback, so it's no big deal. If there was one team around the top 10 where you would be like really excited for this player to go and what he could be in that system. What do you think? What team would jump out at you there?
Because I haven't really thought specifically about fit. Carolina is one that we like continue to bring up because of kind of what type of quarterbacks that Frank Wright has coached. Um, and it just seems like they're a team that he keeps falling to. Atlanta makes a lot of sense, right? I don't know they're actually going to be drafting a quarterback, but just the system they set up. We've talked about Lamar Jackson trade destination being Atlanta. Anthony Richardson really makes sense to me if that's the type of quarterback that would fit in that kind of outside zone scheme if you're running the ball. And similarly, if they were to trade for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens were to be picking there, a team that would be looking to replace Lamar Jackson would be a nice, Anthony Richardson spot.
Yeah, I like the Falcons. We've talked about it with Trayshawn, how like the alignment with where the coaching staff is and um, whether they'd want to pick a quarterback or not, because how long it might take to get that ball rolling doesn't necessarily match up. But I do like the pairing, and maybe Arthur Smith can scheme him up in the run game enough that they can be a successful team, even if he's not a masterful passer right off the bat. I mean, that's an interesting thought there. All right, Nick, thank you so much for doing this with me. We're gonna be back to who did we say we're gonna do next? Are we doing Tanner McKee next?
Either Tanner McKee or Quentin Johnston, whichever we record first and gets up there. It looks like we're going to kind of finish up the quarterbacks, and we're going to go down this positionally instead of by range. We're still doing the top 50 players first. And because McKee, I believe, is a top 50 consensus player, we're going to do him. But we're going to maybe go positionally just because of the way we're doing these podcasts. It aligns a little bit more in the way I'm going through the players and collecting clips. Just it's easier for me a little bit. And we got a lot going on, so
we do. We've bitten off a big chunk of content, so that is absolutely the case. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Remember, you can find us live every Monday and Thursday at the Defiant Takes Football show on YouTube live or on the podcast stream. We're also doing these prospect breakdowns. We're doing the brick wall breakdowns, which are offensive line film reviews with Kyron Samuels, and the DefiantTakesFootball.com webpage has a bunch of articles up. We're doing player profiles and the whole 9 yards, mock drafts, etc. So follow us there at Defiant Takes on all social media. You know where to find us on social media. And we will see you guys again very soon.